After years and years of upgrading, this time has finally come. The iPhone 13 Pro Max is gonna be my last iPhone for several years to come. Let's begin. If you've been keeping up with my podcast, live streams, and videos over the past year, you know that this was coming. This was a plan I've had ever since I got the iPhone 12 mini because there was so little wrong with it. I had so little complaints overall. I was happy with the size, I was happy with the camera, even the battery life was fine for me. So you can imagine how overwhelmed I feel with the iPhone 13 Pro Max being substantially larger, finally getting 120 Hz, which was a major deal for me, and now the camera is miles better than I was anticipating. You know, all I really wanted this year was an iPhone with a decent battery life and 120 Hz, and we got so much more than that with the 13 Pro Max because the macro mode blew my expectations out of the water, and this is by far one of the most fun iPhone cameras I've tested in a long time. Being able to get really close to objects and pull so much detail out of all these images thanks to Deep Fusion, and it even works when you want to record videos at 4K at 60. Cinematic mode was working as a great alternative to my Blackmagic camera for several videos. I had many people when I recorded cinematic mode say, hey, is this a different camera? This looks better. Some people, of course, thought it looked worse. Some people thought it was the red Komodo. So overall, I have learned that in a pinch, the iPhone camera can be somewhat of a stand-in for my dedicated, A-roll shots for my videos. But even with the rollout of ProRes, and I've been watching lots of videos comparing the new ProRes format to just standard recording at 4K. It certainly seems better with certain dynamic range, and it certainly is going to take up a ton more space, but I don't think just ProRes in cinematic mode alone are really going to replace the need for having dedicated cameras or replace the efficiency and the insane quality you can pull from a dedicated camera. And that's been the story for years, and I think it will probably be the story for many years to come. The more frustrating part, of course, about recording ProRes on a phone like this is you're still limited to sharing these massive file sizes over Lightning, which is still USB 2.0, or over AirDrop, which is also not incredibly fast. So unless Apple has plans on switching to USB-C or Thunderbolt in the future, I kind of don't really see why they want to bother with 512 gig and 1 terabyte iPhones. It's impressive that you can pull these types of shots off of a phone, but I think it'll be more interesting long-term to see how many people actually routinely start using their iPhone with ProRes for filming YouTube videos or short films, and how often this becomes a dedicated camera for people outside of just tech reviewers showing off what's technically possible with the 13 Pro Max. But after using it for the past couple weeks, I can confidently say that I think the display of iPhones has peaked for me. I already didn't have much bad to say with the 12 mini display. My only drawback with it was the 60 Hz, but the brightness, the contrast ratio, the pixel density, even the notch was not that big a deal for me. So finding out that maybe the iPhone 14 next year will have a punch hole camera, that's not really something I'm super passionate about, and I don't think I'll care much when it comes out. And we're already hearing leaks today that it's possible that feature's not even happening, and we might be looking at the exact same size notch next year. And after using this phone for the past couple weeks, the notch is not noticeable. I don't look at it very regularly. I don't think to myself, hey, the notch is much narrower now. I just use my phone how I normally use it. And I've handed this phone to different friends and family members, and no one has ever once commented on, whoa, your notch looks a little bit smaller. Like, no one cares. Seriously, outside of the tech community, it does not come up at all. People just think, cutout is at the top of the phone because that's where Face ID and the camera is. So display-wise, there's literally nothing that I can think of Apple could do that would make me want to upgrade from this, because the brightness is insanely high already, and I hardly ever turn up the brightness all the way, even in broad daylight. The refresh rate is extremely noticeable, and I love using it every day and seeing that buttery smooth motion. And I have used displays over 120 Hz, just for the record, before some of you go saying, well, Drew, what if you want to upgrade to an iPhone with 240 Hz or maybe just 160 Hz? Yeah, I've looked at displays that go that high. It becomes increasingly difficult for me to tell the difference. The night and day upgrade of going from 60 to 120, that's very noticeable to me, but everything 120 and up is very difficult to tell. So that's kind of where it caps out out for me when it comes to refresh rate. The size is amazing. It's still taking a little bit of getting used to sometimes, especially in one-handed mode, to kind of reach different aspects of the display, but overall I'm comfortable with it. It fits in my pocket, no problem. In fact, I would probably be fine if Apple one day decided to make a, 7-inch or 7.5-inch iPhone. Probably would be far too big for most people, but I could live with it. But, end of the day, I'm still not willing to upgrade for that feature alone, and because I know that cinematic mode is probably gonna get 4K at 60 support next year, and so will ProRes, I'm sure there will be upgrades in the future. Like, I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying all the upgrades I can potentially see Apple making moving forward are not upgrades that I see myself utilizing or caring much about, and ever since 2016, I've been buying the new iPhone as soon as possible every single year, for you guys to review and give you my impressions on. But similar to Apple Watches, iPads, and Macs, I review a lot of stuff that I don't end up keeping. I either return it or sell it, find a better home for it, and find someone who is willing to utilize those features that can be found on that device. So that's why I still use my 2018 iPad Pro. That's why, despite all of the new Macs that have launched over the years, I'm still using my iMac Pro, because for me, that has prioritized the features that matter the most. And I think I'm ready to start giving that multi-year review experience to iPhones again, because this is prioritizing so many features that matter so much to me, and even then some. Like the telephoto lens, I wasn't too impressed with my first week of impressions, but my wife and I did a photo shoot recently, and we were using a dedicated, professional camera for a bunch of shots, and then the battery died on that camera, so I started showing my wife what kind of pictures we can take with the phone in my pocket, and she actually said, her words, that these camera pictures looked better. I'm incredibly impressed with the portrait mode capability of the telephoto lens and even the standard lens on the 13 Pro Max. Night mode shots look incredible. I've been able to pull so much light out of the night sky, and I know that with the video performance, I can have a stand-in if I'm in a situation where I'm away from my Blackmagic or I'm shooting something quickly and I just need a quick cutaway shot. And I personally don't see the fundamental limits of having a small smartphone camera sensor, even if it can record at ProRes, and even if it can record at 4K at 60. I don't think that feature alone is going to warrant me upgrading and keeping the new iPhone. For the record, I still plan on reviewing future Apple products. It's not like I'm not gonna buy the iPhone 14 at all. It's just I'm not going to keep the iPhone 14 and continue having it in my pocket after I'm done reviewing it. I'm gonna review it just like I review the latest iPads or the latest Macs or certain Apple Watches, even if I don't plan on keeping them. So in those situations where I don't have access to a dedicated camera, but I want to film a video and have it look pretty dang good, I've seen from your guys' reactions when I do occasionally film a video in cinematic mode that the vast majority of viewers out there, they don't really care. Like, certain people notice the difference. Some people picked up on it very quickly and went, this looks different, it looks slightly worse, or some people quickly picked up on, Drew normally films at 60 frames a second, this one is 30 frames a second, but the vast majority of people, the general consensus I got from those comments was that I noticed it, but it's still very good. So basically, the 13 Pro Max can replace my dedicated camera for those circumstances where I need it to. But in those circumstances where most people don't care and most people are just watching the video for the content, you guys aren't watching these videos because they're 4K, you're not watching them because they're 60 frames a second, you're watching them because hopefully I have something interesting to say and you're somewhat curious on my opinion or speculation on future Apple products. And you can get that whether this video is 1080 at 30 or 4K at 60. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So upgrading my whole phone just so that my backup camera can also be 4K at 60, it just seems kind of pointless to me. Like, if I'm going on trips and stuff and I'm gonna be working away from home for extended periods of time, my pocket cinema camera here is not that big. It's not going to be very difficult to pack with me on a trip, and in a pinch I know that this can easily get the job done and people will be comfortable with the resolution, and the look of the overall sensor is still incredibly impressive. And of course, the battery life is insanely good on the 13 Pro Max, which is one of the big reasons I'm excited to review it for many years to come, because right now, like, I'm ending a lot of my days at like 60% or 50% with pretty heavy use, like recording videos off of it, taking tons of pictures, and sometimes on lighter days, like yesterday, I didn't use my phone as much. I ended the day with 75% battery, right? Like, that is just ridiculously good. It's kind of mind-boggling how fantastic the battery life is in this, and I've seen battery battery tests support that as well, beating out the S21 Ultra by several hours. The standby time is incredible. I've done several 2-day battery life experiences where I didn't kill the phone, but I didn't charge it at all during an entire night, and I just woke up the next day and said, 50%, that should get me through this day. So even as the battery health degrades, as I'm sure it will over time because I'm going to use this phone a lot, I know that even if the battery health is at 90%, 80%, probably even at 70%, this will still comfortably get me through the day because, you know, I was just living off of the iPhone 12 mini and I thought the battery life was fine there. So there's still a bunch of features, of course, that I want Apple to bring to the iPhone. I'm still in favor of them improving cinematic mode, getting periscope lenses, or in my opinion, USB-C Thunderbolt would make a lot of sense, at least on the Pro iPhones, because if we're recording file sizes at ProRes and they're gonna take up a ton of space, you want a faster wired way to output those videos. So as much sense as that would make, I don't think it's a feature I see myself utilizing enough to warrant buying a whole new iPhone over. It should be worth mentioning, this is the most expensive iPhone I've ever bought. Like in Apple Sheep history, it's topping out the last record holder, which was the 256 gig iPhone 10. I spent $1,150 on that iPhone, and since then, I moved more stuff into iCloud, and then I started buying more base storage options. And now it's come full circle to where I'm downgrading my iCloud plan because I want to save more monthly revenue in favor of buying a 256 gig iPhone, but the only reason I got 256 was for the 4K at ProRes feature, and this cost me $1,200. So I'm like, okay, I'm spending more money on a phone than I've ever spent because I do plan on keeping this. I do want to hold on to it for the long haul, and I know this will be challenging. I know that making this claim is probably really, really easy right now because I'm buying all the latest and greatest tech, but the real challenge is going to come next year when the iPhone 14 launches, and it's probably going to have a ton of features and maybe some stuff we weren't anticipating, but overall, I'm going to do my best to stay true to my word. I'll review the 14, but then I'll sell it or return it, find a good home for it, and keep using my 13 Pro Max for maybe 3-4 years. I don't really know how long I'm going to keep going with this, but I'm basically going to be looking for very clear and objective reasons to upgrade that I don't think are going to be super obvious within a year or two. Big things I might be waiting for is Thunderbolt. So USB-C really isn't enough for me because I charge everything over MagSafe. And also no notch. I feel like that would be a design change that is very noticeable moving forward. A smaller notch or a camera hole, I don't care much about. No camera bump, which I doubt that rumor heavily, but it would be interesting to see an iPhone that doesn't have one at all. But battery life, I have no complaints. Display, resolution, size, refresh rate, I have no complaints there. And even if they did like a titanium chassis, it would be cool, it would be impressive, but I just don't have enough incentive to upgrade for that feature alone. So I'm absolutely in love with this phone so much, it's gonna be my last iPhone for a while. Do you guys believe me? Do you think I'm gonna be proven wrong in another year? Feel free to let me know in the comments down below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.